Alright, what's up guys? NinjaDeathStrike here. I'm back in Korea, and as promised, I'm going to bring you guys some TCG content. Unfortunately, ptcgo is not quite up yet. I expect it'll probably be up on Wednesday at the latest to coincide with the Dragons Exalted release, but I do have something else for you. As you can see, I have this nice binder kind of in focus here, and this has all of my old Pokemon cards in it. So we're going to go through the binder, take a look and see what I got. I'm sure we won't get through the whole thing today, but it'll be a fun trip down memory lane. We can all reminisce about how cool the old cards were. So let's go ahead and take a look. I'm using my iPhone to record this. I don't have a good webcam or camcorder, so iPhone's going to have to do. I apologize that it's not in focus when I'm pulled out like this, but it doesn't have an autofocus, so I focused it when I'm in close, so you should be able to see the cards better. But anyhow, let's start with the base set. That's the very beginning, and our first ever holo for the base set was Alakazam. This binder is just my rare holos. I couldn't bring all of my cards. They weigh way too much. But I have my rare holos. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of sunlight, so you're not going to get to see all the cool sparkles, but just take my word that they are almost all holo. And anyhow, Alakazam, the original Reuniclus, he has the exact same ability, damage swap, and pretty similar stats, actually. So, moving right along, we have Blastoise, who, if you guys watched my TCG for Game Boy Color playthrough, you should be very familiar with by now. The very first card with energy acceleration, I think. I'm sorry if you can hear that background noise. Someone's banging something. But definitely a really cool card that I really liked. One of my favorites of the old cards. Chansey, who we don't care about too much. Charizard, here's the original, like, super duper expensive card that everybody wanted. I'll go ahead and pull him out here. See if I can get him to shine. Yeah, there you go. You can see some of the sparkles. I can't turn the overhead light on because it gets a really bad glare with all the plastic, but Charizard was a huge deal back in the day. 120 HP was the highest of any card, and doing 100 damage in base set was crazy. So he actually wasn't that good because he was so expensive, but he's just really awesome. Great card art too. And following that, we have Clefairy. I just have these in order by card numbers, so that's why we have Clefairy following Charizard. I don't know why they made this a rare holo. There were definitely better choices, like Electabuzz, but whatever. Gyarados, who is really cool. He has another one of my favorite card arts from the base set. And he's a pretty good card. 100 HP on a stage 2 and 3 for 50 are just great. And moving down here, we have Hitmonchan, who was so important in the Haymaker deck. First edition Machamp, but everyone has first edition Machamp, so it's not that special. Got him, obviously, from the starter deck. And then Magneton. So, the second page, continuing the base set. This guy's actually not from the base set, but I just have him as a placeholder to help so that my base set actually ends on an even page and I don't have cards carrying over. But this is the Electabuzz from the first movie. You can see up there in the top corner it's got that Pokemon first movie stamp. Not nearly as good as the base set Electabuzz, but still, it's nice to have him. And here is the original Mewtwo. Obviously nowhere close to the Mewtwo EX we have now, but he did have a deck. He had a stall deck. He just used Barrier forever until your opponent ran out of cards. And that was the deck. I never tried it. I didn't play competitively. I was too young. I didn't really know about it. I just collected and played with my friends, but some people did try and use this. It was really annoying. And after that, we have the first movie Mewtwo, whose card art is definitely cooler than the base set Mewtwo, and the card's probably better too. It's actually not too bad for a basic in the base set. You can see legendary Pokemon didn't really get special treatment like they do now. And moving down here, we have Ninetales, who's another card I really liked from the base set. I had a Charizard Ninetales deck that was just terrible. So expensive, but still a cool card. Nidoking, our first toxic poisoner. Poliwrath, who's got that energy removal with Whirlpool, which can also be charged by DCE, so that's a really, really good attack. And Poliwrath is a really good card, or was. Raichu, the original Raichu, he's got a pretty cool background going on there. I don't know why he's in the trees, but whatever. I guess he lives in a forest. And then we have Fat Venusaur. What a fat piece of crap. Look at him. He does not give an F. I love this picture. I love Fat Venusaur so much. He's pretty much Meganium Prime is an exact copy of Venusaur, just a little stronger because of power creep, but they do exactly the same thing. And last but not least, we have the base set Zapdos, who was the only other card that could hit for 100, but you had to discard 4 energy to do it, so he wasn't really that great. And moving away from base set, next up we have Jungle. I think we'll probably go through Fossil today and then leave off there, but here's our Jungle, and starting off the Jungle, whoa, sorry about my finger, we have Clefable, and here's the little Jungle mark. Clefairy, Clefable were the only rare hollow combo, I think, that evolved back this early, and you could actually have a rare hollow Clefairy and then evolve into non-hollow Clefable, because starting with the Jungle set, they just released doubles of all of the rares, 1 hollow version and 1 regular, so you only got half of the rares, which kind of sucked. And they did that for a long time, all the way up until Ruby and Sapphire, so Jungle was the set they started doing that. And Clefable's actually pretty cool. You can copy an attack for 1 energy, which is awesome. Next up is Electrode, the very first spread card, or the first good spread card at least. Chain Lightning does 20 damage to the active and then 10 damage to every Pokemon that is the same type as the active. So it could really take apart monotype decks pretty quickly. Obviously didn't fare so well against the other types. My finger, I don't know, sorry guys. Next up is Flareon, the very first of our evolutions. Jolteon, my favorite. I really liked this card. I love the background. He's just going crazy. Kangaskhan. Mr. Mime, who is part of a Mr. Mime Alakazam deck. Even though he only has 40 HP, his Pokemon Power Invisible Wall means that you're not allowed to do more than 20 damage to him at a time. So he can never take more than 20 damage. And in conjunction with Alakazam's damage swap, you could just move that 20 off of him and basically have Mr. Mime be immortal. Obviously, status could get around it since Pokemon powers didn't work if they had a status. And also Gust of Wind. So that was kind of the downfall of Mr. Mime, but still was a cool original deck. Next up we have Skanky Nidoqueen. You can see her attack Boyfriends, does 20 damage plus 20 more for each Nidoking, so she's definitely out there slutting it up with all those Nidokings. 80 for 2 is amazing, but good luck getting 4 Nidokings in play. Next up is Pidgeot, who has cool card art but is kind of terrible. Pinsir, who also has cool art and also isn't very good, better than Pidgeot though. And then finishing up the Jungle, we have our last page of Jungle, as well as 2 more placeholders. Here's the first movie Pikachu, who's actually not that bad for Pikachu. Scyther, who is another key component of the Haymaker deck, and was just a really, really splashable card. Slash doing 30 for 3 colorless, and it being a 70 HP basic with no retreat. Scyther was just phenomenal. Such a good card back then. And we also have Dragonite, who's another movie promo, and he has one of the first draw support abilities. Special delivery. Once during your turn, you may draw a card. If you do, choose a card from your hand and put it on top of your deck. So his attack was terrible, but he did have a cool ability. Snorlax, who has thick-skinned, which prevented special conditions, but back in the day there were only 4: asleep, confused, paralyzed, and poisoned. So once burn came out, you could actually burn Snorlax, which is kind of funny, since you couldn't do any other effects to it. Vaporeon, and Vaporeon is the very first holographic card I ever pulled. My first packs were a couple of packs of Jungle, and I got a holo Vaporeon in the very first pack I ever opened, so definitely got some sentimental value to it because of that. And next up we have a misprint Venomoth. You can see here where the Jungle logo is supposed to be, it's empty, but Venomoth is not part of the base set. It should have that Jungle print, so this is actually a rare error Venomoth, and he's pretty cool. Venom Powder, if you get a heads, you can confuse and poison, and confusion was awful back in the day because you had to actually pay your retreat cost if you wanted to retreat out of it, and then flip, and if you got a tails, you weren't allowed to retreat, but you still had to discard the energy, so confusion was a nightmare. Next up, Victory Bell, who's terrible. Vileplume, who's actually more akin to Blossoms we get now. Her Pokemon power is actually Healing one, no Trainer Lock yet. But I guess Petal Dance is pretty similar to the Vileplume we have now, kind of. And last but not least, Wigglytuff, who is a really strong card with Do the Wave. 3 for 60 was pretty great. That's going to do it for Jungle. So last up for today, we'll take a quick look at the fossil cards. And coming up to the top here, very first fossil card, first edition Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl is pretty much like Archeops. Archeops is almost an exact copy of Aerodactyl. Again, just beefed up because of power creep. But, prehistoric power prevents evolution. So I did try running that with a semi-Haymaker type deck with Aerodactyl and a bunch of big basics. That was cool. Next up, first edition Articuno. I loved this card. I love Articuno. It's one of my favorite of the originals. And it wasn't a very good card. Freeze Dry was okay, I guess, but only 70 hit points and super expensive attacks. Then we have Ditto, who is pretty cool. It never needed any energy. It just becomes... oh no, it does need energy, but all of your energies count as rainbow energies while they're on Ditto. And it just becomes whatever the defending Pokemon is. It just copies them. So that was pretty cool. Unfortunately, it stopped working as soon as you got a special condition, so that kind of sucked, but still. Dragonite, who just reminds... This card art reminds me so much of Winnie the Pooh. Like, he's sucking his paws like he's got honey on them. And the power Step In just lets him switch in for free, so that's pretty neat, I guess. His attack's not great, but I suppose it could be worse. Then we have Gengar, the first Gengar with Curse. It let you move one of your damage counters to one of your opponents once per turn, and then Dark Mind did 30 and then 10 to the bench. This Gengar was a pretty cool guy. Haunter, though, is actually arguably better than Gengar. I have a first edition Haunter. Transparency, the same as Smooth Coat for Cincino. Every time he gets attacked, your opponent has to flip a coin, and if they get a tails, they don't get to do anything. Or no, I guess you flip a coin if you get a heads, but same thing, whatever. And then Nightmare only does 10 damage, but it automatically puts them to sleep, so after an attack, your opponent only has a 25% chance of damaging Haunter, and that just made him a really good stall card, even though he only had 50 HP. He's just impossible to hit. Next up we have Hitmonlee, who sadly is nowhere near as good as Hitmonchan, but that's okay. First edition Hypno, who has Dark Mind, same attack as Gengar. And a first edition Kabutops, and look at this. Stage 2, 60 hit points. That's awful. And his attacks are pretty terrible too. Poor Kabutops. And this will be the last page you can see. I'm sure some of you can see that Fossil ends before the end of the page, but we're going to stop with Fossil today. So next up we have first edition Lapras, who you know I'm a big fan of. Again, if you watched my TCG for Game Boy Color playthrough, was a really good lead card in Blastoise decks. First edition Magneton, who has the honor of being the first Pokemon to have 2 rare holo versions of him printed. He just beat out a couple of these other guys by a couple of cards. He's terrible, but whatever. Moltres, who apparently had a mill deck. I never knew about it, but I found out since then that some people tried a Moltres mill deck with Wildfire. Muck, who is the original Garbodor. Toxic Gas shuts off all other Pokemon powers. So he was a really good card for disruption decks. Raichu, the good Raichu. Giga Shock, super expensive, but does 30 damage and then 10 to 3 bench Pokemon. So another spread card. I used him along with Electrode and this Zapdos we're going to take a look at next in an electric deck that I liked a lot. It was really fun to play. And here's the Zapdos, the good Zapdos. Again, another really expensive attack, but it does 40 to the active, and then you flip a coin for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. If you get ahead, you get to do 20 to them. So Zapdos, Raichu, and Electrode combined were a pretty cool take on an early spread deck. And that is going to end our base set through fossils. So I'll put up some more later, but for now that's going to do it. I hope you guys liked this video. As I said, I will have ptcgo stuff coming as soon as it goes back online. We're not going to be able to trade, so my decks are going to suck. But that'll be fun. We'll see what we can do. So please leave me a comment. Let me know what you guys thought of the video. Thumbs up if you liked it. And yeah, I'll have more coming your way shortly. Thanks for watching, guys.